me and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much for coming out tonight to our commission meeting. And we're going to, there's not a lot of items on the agenda, and probably you're here to speak towards one particular item. So we're going to go through our regular items first before we come to talk about the union issue. So first item on our business is going to be a commission report, and it's involving a Squaxin Tribe grant application, and Mr. Steve Goins is going to present that to us.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. In terms of an introduction, Scott Selsner from the Squaxin Island Tribe is here. We prepared a letter for the city to endorse that would support a number of activities that are intended to provide habitat restoration in the Inner Harbor. As you're aware, having partnerships in these kind of endeavors is critical. This doesn't involve any city property per se, but having the city support this effort I think would be very important for future grant opportunities. In part because we haven't really talked about this in any detail, I think it'd be important for Scott to have a chance to kind of give you an overview of what's being contemplated. So with that, I'll turn it over to Scott.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioners. As you said, my name is Scott Stelzer. I'm a fisheries biologist with the Squaxin Island Tribe. We have a PowerPoint that may or may not be coming up in here. Just wanted to give you a briefing on a multi-partner project that we're doing within, it's called West Oakland Bay. Go ahead and hit it, please. Basic idea is what we're working with. We're talking about the area in Shelton Harbor. It's not going to show up on here. Basically, the north end of the Simpson-owned land and Port of Shelton land in there, north of the railroad berm, kind of that goes out in the water where they pull out the logs going through. It's a multi-phase project. We have one phase going through on phase one, which is constructing some log jams to catch sediment going down there. So part of the idea, if you've paid, there's been some issues in the past of a city sewer pipe going through the Shelton Creek bed that has been taken care of as far as being rerouted. At some point, that pipe itself is going to have to come out of there. What we looked at is that as a one-time sediment source. That is a good thing that would be good for rebuilding the delta within the estuary, and within that would also solve some of Simpson's problems as far as stopping a head cut. That's basically an area that starts working its way upstream and it starts removing sediment, and you have a problem, you just end up with something like this going up. And so right now that's all being stopped by the pipes and the rock that's going in there. But part of DFW's HPA process and permitting was those pipes are eventually going to have to come out. Well, they're holding up quite a bit of sediment behind that. When those start moving out, I think there'll be a couple things that'll be benefit for the city is that sediment will lower the creek bed slightly down in there, providing more flood storage within the system as it's going out. It'll also provide natural sediment in the mouth that we can start rebuilding, and I'll touch on that in a second. The second is having a more natural salt marsh within that northern part of the harbor. Simpson is willing at this point that we remove all the creosote pilings out there. They're not going to be able to use that anymore. They still will be using the south part for all the log dumps in there. So with that, they barge the logs in, put them up on the trains, move them back out again. So this north portion can be open for some of the restoration habitat. Port of Shelton's shoreline, which is part of Simpson's up in there, has some issues of an old creosote bulkhead. There's some contamination behind that. Working with ecology, what they would like to do is bury that bulkhead in there instead of pulling it out and potentially have the sediment and the contamination issue problems. If they just bury it, you can have a much more natural shoreline and take care of that problem. The fourth, which is kind of behind that picture, is to put in Conservancy Eagle Point, which is currently owned by the Port of Shelton. This is something that City of Shelton has worked long on to be able to turn that into a park. That never happened for various reasons, went through, but at least at this point we could put it into Conservancy for a future. So go forward, please. Really important for us, we're talking for the tribe, most of the major salmon streams in Mason County and South Sound are in Oakland Bay. This is our major area, Goldsboro Creek being the major one of those. Forward, please. So why this is so key to us is this is like a success story. The Goldsboro Creek Dam was pulled out in 2000. Since then, coho numbers have been trending up. This is one of the few streams in all of Puget Sound where coho numbers are still going up. This is now the second biggest producer of coho in all of South Sound outside the Nisqually. This is a huge success story that we've been building on there. So we've had a lot of restoration projects in the upper watershed, and now we think it's time to take care of the mouth as we start moving forward. Just kind of our goals is what used to be a natural salt marsh, which is where the mill is now. That's never going to go away, and we fully support that. All the other streams that you can start looking at have a much natural salt marsh going in front of it. What we have going at Goldsboro just goes straight out into the mud flats. The coho are doing well with that, but we can make it do better just by making it a much more natural system. Forward, please. So our site we're talking about was West Oakland Bay, just up north of the berm, where the railroad tracks are. Forward, please. So that's where I was talking about other streams. If I can point all the other streams within on the left, and that's Cranberry Creek and Deer Creek, major saltwater marsh system going from that. Kennedy Creek over on the right, same thing. Any of the streams I'm going to look at are just going to have huge salt marsh complexes. Forward, please. So our strategy. 4 pieces to that. One is first put these structures in the mouth of Goldsboro to catch the sediment as it's going out. That'll start rebuilding the creek mouth, stop the head cut. This will help Simpson out with along in the mill in the area where they're currently having to dump rock to protect their bridges going across there and along the banks. Phase 2 is the Shelton Harbor, start the beginning of the process of rebuilding the salt marsh. Phase 3 is the port shoreline. At this point, we're only proposing working with them to finalize the design of the shoreline. Their shoreline on the Phase 3 is going to have to meld in with the rest of the project going in there. And Phase 4 is the Eagle Point conservation. Forward, please. So our Phase 1 is the ELJ. It's kind of hard to see. It's just some large wood structures going in there. So working with engineers, assuring us there's nothing going to be able to go out there as far as they're not going to be able to float off or anything like this. Again, this is all on Simpson land, but they're very aware of these things. They'll have signs on them. Ideally, within a couple of years, hopefully these things are actually buried. And that's that. They're catching their sediment as it's coming out of the stream, stopping it, and they should be buried. Number 2, please. Phase 4 again, this is the Eagle Point conservation. This abuts the city of Shelton property where the wastewater treatment plant is. So this is one of the, this is by far the highest rated parcel in West Oakland Bay, which isn't saying much. You can be able to do that. But within the whole Oakland Bay watershed, in there, this is the 5th highest rated parcel for conservation. So if we start combining this area, which is outlined in red in some of the tidelands, with the city of Shelton part up in there that's in forestry right now, you have a nice piece of high value property. Forward, please. So our component 4, that's the Eagle Point. It's just 2 acres of wetland and nice riparian and 1,600 feet of marine shoreline. That'll be conserved forever. Forward. So 2 and 3, so this is just a conceptual drawing, but it's going to be pretty close of what we're proposing at this point. So this is the idea of building a salt marsh within the mouth of Goldsboro Creek and starting as we start moving forward. There can be a little bit of riparian planting going on in some of these areas. And again, this is just north of the current railroad berm. Everything of the south can stay the same at this point. This would also tie into the port's idea of the shoreline. They're looking for public access within that and have a much more natural and nice looking place to be able to do it and be much more beneficial for fish. Move forward, please. So it just kind of ties everything together, kind of get an idea of what the proposal is at this point. Okay, forward. So we have applied last year through Surfboard for Phase 1. It was the number 2 rated project within WIRA 14. It wasn't fully funded at this point because the number 1 project costs so much and WIRA 14 doesn't get a whole lot of money. So we think we have a very strong proposal and we have several other grants. So we turned it down, working with our partners, which are again Simpson, the Port of Shelton, Mason Conservation District, working with the Eagle Point, with the Port Short Line, Capital Land Trust working with the Eagle Point Conservation, the South Puget Sound Salmon Enhancement Group working on that Phase 1 and Phase 2 salt marsh portion in there. So we turned back the money on the Phase 1 for Surfboard because we think we're doing pretty good. We just put in for PSAR, Puget Sound Acquisition and Restoration Fund in there, and now, if you can go forward, several other grants started coming up is ESRP, which is partially the reason I'm up in here. That'll be a grant going forward. Estuary and Salmon Restoration Fund. Another one, there's many of these Puget Sound funds going out there. So the idea is we're going to be able to get one or two of those and be able to move forward. So one, I'm here is just to brief the commissioners on what some of the thinking is and all the partnerships going on with that. Two, it would be highly beneficial to us if we could get a letter of support from the commission saying that, you know, even though this is on private land and it's not city, it kind of goes in with the ideas of what you guys are thinking and also what we're thinking. So, and that's what it is. We can still have a working waterfront, but still make it much, much better for the environment or for the fish.
All right. Thank you very much. I believe we have a letter. I think we're going to give you a letter.
Okay.
I believe that. So do we have a letter?
We have an original letter. You can hear me out. Leslie Ann has a letter for the commission to sign if you so desire.
I think I have a copy of it, unless I'm mistaken.
I think
like
that's
a
the
letter.
copy we're going to
There's a
sign.
copy
I'd
of
just
the proposed letter in your packet, yes.
All right.
I'd just like to make a comment.
Sure.
I really appreciate Steve's wording and his language in this letter that he drafted for us. And I would just like to say that I applaud and support your efforts. I'm very excited about the changes that are underway for our waterfront to bring back a more natural waterfront and to take more advantage of what we have. You know, the city is working on the Pear Orchard project as well, which is the other end. So I think it's extremely timely and extremely complimentary for everyone to work together.
Absolutely. This is one of these few win-win. Everyone seems to be coming out, so good.
All right. Any other?
Yeah, and another complementary piece to that is the wastewater treatment plant that we have put in. It opened up,
Absolutely.
I think, was it 600 acres of shellfish beds in Oakland Bay, so we've done our part, and it's great that we're getting some help with cleaning up everything for the county like that, so.
Yep, this probably would not be going forward if it wasn't for those efforts of
Exactly,
everyone,
yeah.
just as we keep moving forward. As you saw those numbers of Coho, they keep going up and up and up, and we just want to keep building on that.
Very good.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next on our agenda is our weekly commission reports. We do things throughout the week, and so we give a little report on what we're doing. Commissioner Moore.
Okay. Tomorrow, I have a community services group meeting in the afternoon, as well as a housing coalition meeting in the afternoon. On Wednesday, I have a Peninsula RTPO meeting. And then on Saturday, I'm hoping to attend a Shelton Rotary event. That one has a question mark.
All right. Commissioner Olson.
The only meeting I have scheduled this week is with the Mason Transit Authority Board, and the other thing I wanted to announce was that last week I attended an exit interview for the auditor, state auditor, and once again Kathy Byerly and her great finance staff came out with a clean audit for I think 18 years in a row now or something. It's a world record for Shelton, I know that. So, but congratulations to Kathy and her staff. It's a huge job, and it's a big mark to get this clean audits like that. So that's all I have for tonight.
All right. Tomorrow I will be attending a MACECOM board meeting. Thursday, an Economic Development Council board meeting. Friday, an Economic Development Council lunch. And Saturday night, I will be attending the Rotary dinner at the Colonial House. That concludes our commission reports. Next on the agenda is a general public comment period. Now, if you have anything that you would like to speak to that's not concerning the union issue, you could speak now. If you want to talk about the union issue, we're going to have a whole section there. So if I name a name and if you want to speak now, then you can, but we will have 2 other opportunities in the meeting. So. Okay. Well, let's see. Jay, would you like to come up and speak, Jay Hupp, about something other than the union?
Thanks for the opportunity to comment. On behalf of the Economic Development Council, I'd like to encourage you to adopt the proposed zoning changes that are going to make it easier for business development and expansion in the community. It's a subject that, in a more general sense, we're going to speak to at the board meeting on Thursday morning, but I'd like to encourage you to adopt the zoning changes that have been proposed. We've been needing that type of thing for a long time, and hopefully this is the first step in the right direction that is going to lead to a lot more action. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hupp, and that was amazing. You kept that under 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
I've been practicing.
You knew you had other people ahead of you, so, or behind you, so. Thank you. All right, next, then, everyone else is going to speak about the item number F. So at this point, what we would like to do is go address our consent agenda and have my fellow commissioners had ample time to review the material in your packet. And so Leslie, can we please have a reading of the consent agenda?
Consent agenda, ordinance number 1859-0914, second reading. An ordinance of the City of Shelton, Washington, amending Shelton Municipal Code, Chapter 20.06, specifically relating to Table 20.06.030B, permitted and conditional land uses. Basin 3, Department of Ecology Design Funding Contract Number L1200003, extending design completion date to September 30th, 2014, authorizing the mayor to sign and city administrator to make any necessary budget modifications. SR3 enhancements. Supplemental Agreement Number 1 to Agreement Number LA-04790, KPFF and City of Shelton budget increase amount of $25,289, authorizing the mayor to sign and city administrator to make all necessary budget modifications.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move we approve the consent agenda.
I second that motion.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda passes. There is no old business at this time, but there is an item of new business that we were going to talk about this evening, and that's probably what most of you are here to speak to and listen to. And so, it involves the initiative process, a couple of propositions, and what we have is we're going to hear some presentations from our staff, and then we are open to hear public comment on this. So first, I would like to turn this over to our city administrator, Mr. Dave O'Leary, and he will start the conversation. The farther that thing goes away from the mic, probably.
There you go.
I just needed to unplug it.
Perfect fix.
Oh, unplug it, okay, that's a good way.
Excuse me, Dave, but we do have at least 5 seats in here.
If someone else would like to come and sit, there's seating up here up front. If you want to come and sit, yeah, you're welcome to. If you like to stand back there, that's fine. All right, Mr. O'Leary.
Just the first part of the report, I'd like the city attorney to address, and I'll go second.
All right, very good.
Good evening, everyone. As you know, you have 2 initiative propositions in front of you. The first one is the Collective Bargaining Transparency Act, and the second one is called the Collective Bargaining Protections Act. They were proposed kind of as a package deal last month in August, and the Mason County Auditor determined that they had sufficient signatures at the end of August. According to the revised Code of Washington, once the auditor determines that an initiative has sufficient signatures, you have 2 options, and the case law gives you a third. Those options are to either pass the initiatives as ordinances without alteration, or submit the initiatives to the ballot along with a ballot title for a general or a special election. And then the third option, which is not in the statute but is in case law, is to make a finding that the initiatives, one or both, are legally invalid, and for that reason not either pass them as ordinance or submit them to the ballot. As you noted from the staff report that was jointly submitted by the city attorney and city administrator, we're recommending a finding of invalidity in this case.
One quick question. Can everyone hear her in the back there? Okay. So we can move that little thing over here if we want. I think it's very important that everyone hears her. So I'll just take a break here for a second, see if I can kind of make things work a little bit. You can try and plug that in and then put this thing way away, but it just needs to be farther away for some reason. So we can try that method. bear with it. We're just I want to make sure everyone hears everything, so try this again. Because this has to, our system works like this. So, now, why don't you try to see if it's going to squeak?
Better?
Better?
Okay.
Let's try.
All right, so starting first with the Collective Bargaining Transparency Act, which is the Proposition 1 that you received. The substance of that would essentially open collective bargaining sessions or other meetings between City of Shelton staff and representatives of the bargaining unit to the public. As it currently stands, the Open Public Meetings Act, while requiring
Try again. I'm sorry about this, but let me just see what we can do underneath that. I used to play in bands when we said, this is gonna happen. Okay, we're gonna make this
Mr.
happen.
Wizard.
This is gonna happen because I want everyone to hear what's going on.
Gary, why don't you pull the mic closer to her mouth?
Well, that might help. See, we have a system where this little box here works with that, and it's a vibration thing. So why don't you try speaking to the microphone if you can, then we'll just see what we're
That microphone doesn't have anything to do with the room.
No,
That one does.
this one.
this one's okay, it's just that one.
It's just this one. Talk in this direction. If it doesn't squeak, we'll,
This picks me up on the record and that,
yep.
okay.
Yep.
So I'll just talk at that.
I don't hear squeaking at the moment, so.
Okay, so the Transparency Act would kind of go against the grain of the city's prior practice or pre-existing practice of not having collective bargaining sessions open to the public. And the proposition is interesting because it doesn't expressly bind the union. It's really aimed at what City of Shelton staff do. And because of that, there could be some problems that the city encounters in trying to enforce it. Just to give you an example, should the city decide tonight to pass the Transparency Act as an ordinance, what you might find is that the city negotiators argue for the bargaining sessions to take place in public. However, the unions do not agree with that. And as a result of that, the negotiations stall and do not take place. It's an open question as to how an unfair labor practice complaint, should one be brought, would come out, whether it would be found that the city or the union were committing the unfair labor practice. Moving on to the second initiative, which is the Protections Act. Substantively, that one, again, is expressly aimed at city staff. It says the intent of this chapter is to instruct and govern representatives of the city in collective bargaining. So again, it's really aimed at the city's actions, but not necessarily the unions. That particular provision would prohibit the inclusion of union security clauses in bargain agreements, would prohibit the gifting of public funds for the benefit of City of Shelton union operations, and would prohibit public work stoppages. And by that, I interpret public work stoppage to mean strikes. As you're probably aware, the state law concerning collective bargaining already prohibits public employees' unions in the state from striking. And most collectively bargained agreements already have no strike clauses, whereby the employees pledge that they won't attempt to enforce their rights by striking. With regard to the union security clause issue, all four current collective bargaining agreements with the City of Shelton and its unions have union security clauses, which require all covered employees either to join the union or to pay their dues to a charitable organization in the event of a religious objection to being in a union. So to the extent that the Protections Act would bind city staff, it would essentially require those existing provisions to be bargained out of the agreements when the agreements reopen. The Protections Act goes on to provide that violations by city staff bar the negotiator from representing the city in collective bargaining for at least a year. And any knowing violations are grounds for criminal charges against the city staff in the form of a misdemeanor charge, and conviction is cause for removal from office. So there's pretty high stakes for any city staffer who takes on the mantle of negotiating collectively bargained agreements should these become law. In terms of the three options that you have before you tonight, we absolutely recommend against passing either one of these propositions as ordinances without alteration, which is your first choice. And two major reasons for that. First of all, again, because at least the Protections Act is aimed squarely at city staff, but not necessarily at the unions. City staff is going to have no guarantee that they can actually achieve what's written in here. They've got to get the unions to agree, and the unions aren't necessarily going to agree. So that puts your city staff potentially in the position of either getting the city into an unfair labor practice complaint, bringing on interest arbitration with the police union, or facing criminal charges and the loss of their job. And the Transparency Initiative doesn't have the same sort of dire consequences for city staff, but again, significant doubts about how enforceable it would be if, again, the unions aren't willing to agree to have bargaining sessions in public. As you know from the briefing, collective bargaining is heavily regulated by state law. The state statute on collective bargaining is RCW 4156. It has very specific provisions about what rights members of unions have, what rights bargaining units have.
It was doing so well. Okay.
And it also
Well,
has
so much for my ideas.
yeah. And the state law also has a provision that overrides any inconsistent clauses that are contained within local laws. Finally, there's a state law provision that we cited in the staff report that makes it illegal to penalize any staff member criminally who's attempting to discharge obligations under collective bargaining. The second option that the City Commission has would be to pass a resolution placing the initiatives on the ballot. Again, we recommend against that option for similar but additional reasons. The dimension that's new with regard to the question of whether this should be placed on the ballot is the question of whether either of these are permissible subjects of the initiative power. There are a long line of cases that discuss this question in the context of a wide variety of citizens' initiatives that have been brought in cities across the state. The first questions that have to be asked with regard to whether any initiative is legally valid is, first of all, does it deal with a power that has been expressly delegated to the city council or commission as a legislative body? And collective bargaining has been. In RCW 35A 11020, the state legislature has said that the city, a code city, which Shelton is, shall have the broadest possible powers, and that the local legislature of that code city, which is the city commission in this case, shall have power over all aspects of collective bargaining. And then goes on to add that that collective bargaining shall be done in conformance with RCW 4156, which is the chapter that sets the ground rules for collective bargaining. The second question that has to be answered when determining whether an initiative is a permissible subject is whether it relates to legislative or administrative powers. Legislative powers present new courses of action and policies. Administrative powers concern the exercise of powers and policies that you already possess and are discharging. To give you an example, the City of Port Angeles, the Our Water, Our Choice case that's cited in the staff report, dealt with a city council vote to start fluoridating the water supply. And because that recent vote that was challenged was taken in accordance with the city's water plan, which had already been passed years earlier, and because the state legislature heavily regulates water supplies, including fluoridation, that decision was found to be administrative in nature, not legislative, and therefore not permissible subject of initiative. So it's our recommendation that the initiatives that you have before you tonight are analogous in that they concern a subject that's not only heavily regulated by state law, but is also pre-existing policy and function that the City Commission carries out. Finally, the initiatives as proposed contain numerous conflicts with RCW 4156, which we pointed out to you in the staff report. And the analogy that City of Sequim, which you know is also has identical initiatives, the analogy that their city attorney made in the staff report that I think is helpful here is cities are pretty much paralyzed when it comes to following state laws. If, for example, citizens got the required number of signatures on a ballot measure to prohibit the city from complying with competitive bidding and the payment of prevailing wage on public projects, that would not be a permissible subject because it flatly contradicts state law. There's no question that as a municipality you have to comply with Title 39 of the RCW, which requires competitive bidding and prevailing wage. And the same analysis holds true here. Finally, your last option, option 3, is to make a finding in accordance with the recommendation in the staff report, which is that both initiatives are legally invalid. RCW 3517-290 gives the proponent of an initiative the right to a court decision contesting that determination. And certainly there's a long history of courts making both pre-election and post-election decisions on the validity of initiatives at the state and local level. So if the city takes a stand now contesting the validity of the initiatives, then the court can certainly review that and order an election if the judge deems an election to be legally supportable. So for all those reasons, our recommendation is a finding of invalidity, and I will turn the mic over to Mr. O'Leary at this point.
We'll see what happens with that one, the other mic. My perspective on this is a little different than that of the attorney. Those were legal arguments. Mine are really management issues, and so I want to walk through those with you. There's a little bit of overlap, but I think they still give a different perspective, even if it's on the same subject. My concern is largely, one of the concerns is largely for city employees who are in leadership positions because they manage people who are in a union environment. And either of the initiatives place them in an untenable situation. For instance, in initiative number 2, you're really compelled to ask yourself, do we violate local ordinances where there's a criminal violation and potential career consequences, or do we knowingly violate state rules? That's a bit of a dilemma for me because one of the things I get to do that others don't is an oath of office, which obliges me to follow both. Similarly, initiative number 1 unilaterally declares that the bargaining sessions will be open, and yet there's no wherewithal to be able to enforce that except for us. So what are your choices? You can refuse to meet. If they're not an open, and the unions, I think there's a good chance they will say, that's not how we want to do it, and then you're confronted with an unfair labor practice, and you don't get any bargaining done. So there's a dilemma. There's also a dilemma for the organization. I think either way we go, we're going to get sued, based on Squim's example. There are folks lining up on both sides who want us to decide on their side of this, and when we don't, they're going to sue us. And I don't know if that's entirely bad. I got some problems with that, but one of the benefits is that if our employees are placed in a position of having to choose between conflicting laws, it would help me to know that a judge has ordered us to do so. Just a little bit about the financial issues, and this is along the way as a full disclosure rather than because we can actually do much about it. The legal fees are probably going to cost tens of thousands of dollars, and at least tens of thousands of dollars, and probably into 6 figures. The last time this issue was argued up in North Puget Sound, I believe there were many years of litigation, and we've been through one of those recently, one of those many years of litigation, and the bills are quite high, 6 figures. Regardless, the election expenses, depending on, and this is in the staff report, but depending on whether you do a general election or whether you do a special election, the costs will vary. But I'd guess anywhere from $3,000 or $4,000 up to maybe 10 or 20, 15 or 20. And when we pay these costs, what we'll be confronted with is some consequences, such as what street project do we not do because we spent the money on legal fees? What public safety service do we not provide because we spent the money on legal fees? What we've been asked to do, and I have enormous respect for the initiative process, and I have enormous respect for the people that went out and collected these signatures. And I'm not entirely unsympathetic. I mean, there are changes that I'd like to see within the bargaining laws. Heck, there's changes I'd like to see in open public records and bidding and permit requirements and Growth Management Act. I'd like to similarly pass an initiative that overturned unfunded mandates every time the state wants us to do something and they don't send the money. But if we challenge them, we're going to lose. I mean, the state gets to set the rules. The way that you overturn them, those wrong rules, is you get a bill passed in the legislature or you run it through the statewide initiative process. If you try to do it locally, you're just setting us up for a fight that we'll lose and we'll spend a lot of money along the way. And I tried to look at this also, well, what's going to cost us more depending on what side we go on this. And my suggestion is that I think it's going to cost less if we try to comply with state law. At least we don't have to do an enormous legal creative analysis in order to rationalize our way why we wouldn't do it. So for those reasons, I recommend that you declare both initiatives legally invalid and further recommend that you make a finding that the initiatives are legally invalid. That concludes staff's report.
All right, we've heard our lawyer's opinion, we've had a staff report, and now is the opportunity for anyone that wants to speak on this subject. We have a 3-minute time rule, and that's just the way it's going to. I'm going to go through these names, and if you want to speak, then there's another list right over there. You can sign up, and this is the opportunity to speak for or against this, and whatever your comments might be. And I'll just start down this list. And it looks like Steve Brostrom. Is that Steve Brostrom? And if I mispronounce your names, forgive me, because I'm a product of the public school system, which I love, but.
I'll make this quick. I'd like to say good evening to everybody.
Yeah. State your name
An address.
and address for the record, if you could.
Steve Bostrom, 70 East Bostrom Lane, Shelton, Washington, 98584.
Thank you very much, sir.
You bet. I'll make this quick because I know there's people, I don't work for the city. I'm 63 years old. I spent 5 years in the Air Force. The rest of the time, I've been here in Shelton, either worked for Simpson Timber Company or the Washington Correction Center out here. I don't know how anybody could disagree with the city attorney and the administrator. It's unlawful to see these this big, I don't know what you want to call it, the Freedom Foundation has been in business for a long time, and they're backed by lots of money. How they can walk into these states and take them over and change things. I just found out about this the other day. I got on the internet and was looking around, and there's like 7 states west of the Mississippi that hasn't signed up with them. Now something's not right there. You know, nobody's gone back in history and looked about our labor forces and how they got there. So I'm opposed of it. I just applaud that they even got this far with you guys. It's just amazing. So go get them.
Thank you. Next is that, oh gosh, I don't know. Is that Carmen, Charmin?
It's Charmaine.
Charmaine? Yeah, Charmaine. Sorry, Charmaine. I know Charmin.
You do?
Charmaine,
Nice
from
to meet you, Gary.
30 years, but anyway, welcome.
My name is Charmaine Chart, 916
Charmaine.
West Bulb Farm Road, and I've been in Mason County since 1980. And I'm really passionate about this because I don't think it's right to go through an initiative that's going to be in February and put the burden on the taxpayers, because it's going to cost a lot of money to put that initiative in. Money can be well used on the roads, parks, whatever it is around Shelton that needs to be fixed. So the unions are working, leave them alone, and let's fix our city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, next it looks like Rob Coleman. Very good. No problem. Thank you, Rob. Okay, it looks like, Mike, you seem to do a great job reading those names. Why don't you try that? I'm failing.
Betty Lippencroft?
All right. Thank you.
I think you might have done better with that name, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, let's just,
Debbie Lippincott.
okay, Debbie.
And I actually live in Port Orchard. I work for the Fraternal Order of Police, and I'm a labor specialist with them. So I'm here on behalf of the police union.
And I guess your address, they want your address.
Address is on there, 5192 Southeast Old Clifton
Very
Road,
good.
Port Orchard.
Thank you.
And, you know, just a reminder, Washington is not a right-to-work state. The Public Employee Collective Bargaining Act clearly lays out what the relationship is between the parties. And it works. It works very well. And there's no reason to change it. These propositions, as the city attorney said, they're invalid. They would conflict with state law as it stands right now, and would do nothing but cause a lot of labor unrest within the city. Employees have a right to choose. You know, I noticed that, you know, let the employees choose or whatever. They are choosing. They choose to come to work for the city. The city has unions. They ratify contracts every time a contract comes around, and those contracts contain union security agreements. So the employees are choosing to work in a union environment where there is a union security agreement. So please, find these invalid.
Thank you. Next.
Pat Tarswell.
Pat Tarswell.
Pat Tarswell, 51 East Ann Arbor, Shelton. Thank you, commissioners and city attorney. I didn't catch your name, so. There's a whole lot to cover, and I only have 3 minutes, so I'll kind of fly over this really quickly. You've pointed out a few things in your briefing request that I downloaded, and one of them, it's about the 6th bullet point down. It says a provision for allowing collective bargaining agreements to contain union security clauses. Agreed. But allowing does not mean must, shall, will. It means you can have collective bargaining security clauses. It doesn't say we have to have them. So we have the option to not do that. Second one, an initiative, further down the page, an initiative is determined to be sufficient. If an initiative is determined to be sufficient, the statute sets forth 2 options for the commission. You talked about a third option. The third option comes from case law. Well, excuse me, but only a judge gets to determine whether or not case law applies in this case. So you don't have an option here. You have 2 statutory rules that you have to follow. If a court is going to decide this, they get to go by case law or not. They get to decide the application of therein. I've messed this up here, son. I've gotten lost. I'll go back to the 2 initiatives. The first one is transparency. As I stated last week, our Constitution, the Washington State Constitution, says all political powers inherent in the people. Governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed. How do we, the governed, give our consent to secret negotiations? It's very difficult. We can see the outcome of those negotiations, but we can't see what promises are being made, what deals are being made. How do we know? What is being hidden from us? If we are the rightful power in this government, how can we possibly know what's going on in secret meetings? And the last part of that, Washington Constitution, all political powers inherent in the people. Governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed and are established to protect and maintain individual rights. The individual right of any employee to decide whether they would like to be in the union or not should be up to the employee. Not mandated by any contract, because it doesn't protect the individual's rights. It protects the union. And all I care about are the union workers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. Next.
Tom Davis.
I could have got that name right.
Thank God for an easy name. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Tom Davis, 170 West Bushy Road. I'm a little conflicted about this, quite frankly, because no one wants or desires transparency in government more than I. And the Open Public Meetings Act is the Bible to me. So on that part, it's a little difficult to say what I'm about to say. And that is that I count no less than 4, possibly 5 RCW chapter statutes that would be, you'd be in violation for if you accepted this initiative. That kind of goes against my grain, but that's the fact. This is really a legal issue, and I'd love to make an argument on a more passionate level, but it wouldn't make any difference. You have a legal issue in front of you, and that legal issue is explained very adequately by the city attorney. So I really don't know where the decision is to be made, simply because you're going to be sued one way or you're going to be sued the other way. This is really a matter for the state legislature. This is where it should go. I have problems with RCWs. I take my time and effort, I bring it up to the Capitol Hill, and I lobby my legislators and I try to make an argument and convince them. They shouldn't put you between a rock and a hard place right here. This is very manipulative. Even if you gathered all the signatures, and even if you actually abided by the initiative as it's written, you'd be in violation of state law. And you're subordinate to state law. So I don't know where the discussion is. And I hope you'll look at it as objectively as that. There are plenty of other reasons to deny this initiative, but that's the legal one, and I don't think the discussion goes any further than that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
John Osga.
You state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is John Osga. I live at 213 Grandview. I've been a resident of the city of Shelton for 35 years. I am also a city employee that has worked for the city for 35 years. I run the wastewater division. In the wastewater and the water fields, under the state law, the upper ends of the operators must be licensed and certified through the state. What the dilemma is happening across the country is that in the next 10 years, 50% of the water and wastewater personnel in this country is going to be retiring, and they don't have the ranks to fill it. It's a highly technical field, and you have to go through the schooling and the testing procedure. Where that could hit Shelton very hard is that bigger municipalities are having a very difficult time finding qualified people. That hurts the smaller communities even more, because now they have to compete with the larger communities. In the case of Shelton, over the past 6 years, you've spent close to $60 million to upgrade the wastewater system, to get it out of violation, and to get it ready for jobs and growth. Without certified operators that you can attract, all that money is for nothing. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Ken Dickinson.
Ken? There's Ken right there.
Hi, my name's Ken Dickinson. I live at Southeast 361 Old Olympic Highway. I'm an employee of the city. We feel, as a union guild, that this is illegal. There's some stats here that says the poverty rate goes up within the communities that this does pass in. I think Shelton's hurting enough as it is. We need things to come in to grow here. And basically, we would like you guys to deny this. So I'm going to keep this short, and that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Ken. All right, next.
Luke Manning.
Closer, further away.
Wow, you got some presents happening.
Just a vibration.
Luke Manning, 430 West, Dayton Trails Drive. I also work for the city. Both these initiatives conflict with state law and are therefore unconstitutional. The initiatives are administrative rather than legislative, and they are not appropriate for the city's initiative process. The Freedom Foundation is using our community as guinea pigs in a legal and political battle that we didn't ask for. It will be expensive to take on and will lower our community standards. What is their motive, and why are they setting us up for this confusing and controversial battle? Out-of-town special interests with their extreme agenda are using our beloved city as their personal political football. Extreme right-wing corporate donors like the American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC, fund the Freedom Foundation. ALEC's objective is to rewrite state and now local laws to benefit corporations, not people. We, the taxpayers, will be left with the legal bills to figure this out. The Freedom Foundation uses words like transparency and choice but they hide the fact that they are funded by out-of-state billionaires and their agenda is straight out of the corporate playbook. They could not pass these ideas on a statewide level, so they are trying to destroy workers' rights on a city-by-city level. The Freedom Foundation is orchestrating the same scheme in cities across Washington. They are lying when they say local activists are leading this charge. They tried to pass both these initiatives in Olympia and they couldn't get support from the legislature. So now they're trying the same tactics city by city. There's no doubt that the Freedom Foundation's agenda comes straight from ALEC. Recently, Alex John Russell announced they are moving to a local strategy to implement these initiatives at the city level. Russell also admitted that there is little legal evidence to support their argument. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you very much. Nick?
April Pooler? Sandy Tarswell.
Sandy Tarswell, 51 East Ann Arbor, Shelton. I listened to the staff report given by the city, addressed the commissioners and the mayor and city attorney and city administrator. Thank you. I listened to the staff report given by these two fine people and had a couple of questions that came to mind. Mr. O'Leary mentioned management issues and what a nightmare, or he sees a lot of problems in the management issues. But I did a little bit of looking online at open meetings and found, and at collective bargaining, and actually found entire states that have open meetings for their collective bargaining. So apparently they found some way to resolve the numerous management issues. And those states, I only did a little bit of research. I found a web page that had all of the open meeting laws for all 50 states, and I just started clicking on states. I clicked on West Virginia, New York, Florida, Colorado, Tennessee, and much to my surprise, I found 3 right off the bat out of those 6 that had open meetings laws that applied to collective bargaining done out in the open. I don't know if that indicates that 50% of the states do it that way, or if I just got lucky in picking those few states that I did. The other question that I had was I heard the city attorney refer to Shelton as a code city, and I believe that I had been informed here recently that it is a commission city. And so I wonder if that same statute still applies, and that would be on the one that collective bargaining is not subject to initiative because of whatever the code cities do, but we're a commission city, so I question whether Shelton is governed by that argument or not. And regardless of the outcome, it seems to be an indication by the number of signatures that were gathered, that there might be coming a time when we need to have a new conversation about collective bargaining, and things may be needing to be changed, regardless of what you guys do here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nick?
Eric Smith.
All I want to put out there is that the information that's being
Give
cleared.
us your name and
Oh,
address,
Eric
please.
Smith, P.O. Box 375, Shelton. I have lived and worked and shopped and recreated in Shelton for over 20 years. I love this town, and I'd hate to see it go to the dogs. Now, everybody's come up here and said that you have these political fat cats, the haves, who are sponsoring this. It's not a local thing. It's these people who want to bring about their agenda to change things because, again, they have not been able to do it with the state. And why is that? That's a right-to-work state. And if you look in the history, the unions, before the unions came about, you had children working ungodly hours, you had people just, there was no benefits, there was no protections as far as work goes. The unions came about and brought all those out. Sick leave, medical, dental, retirement, all these things came about, not because somebody just decided to do that, it was because the unions brought about it for us. So to sit here and let the haves dictate to the have-nots who are barely getting by, that's wrong, and it is illegal. And it is an individual's choice whether they want to work a union job. But at one point, it's that individual's choice in our democracy where we voted on that, and we said, yes, we want to do that. So you have the ayes and you have the nays, and if there are not enough nays to overcome the ayes, then that's just the way it goes, because that's the way our democracy was put together. So, and if you look and do a lot of investigation, not just a little bit, the right-to-work states that have been put together nationwide, you have the poor and the rich, the haves, the have-nots. And here's the middle class created by the union labor and union jobs that have been there for many years. When you have those states with the right to work, all of a sudden those middle class start drifting down, and these rich fat cats start going up further. We need to take care. This is a blue-collar community. We've worked hard to make it the way it is. I don't want to see these people come in and make these decisions, so please, let's vote no on this.
Thank you.
Laurelyn Rogers.
I do agree on the yay and
Your
nay
name
cross.
and name and
Oh, I'm
address,
sorry, my
please.
name is Laurelyn Rogers. I live at 229 Wyandotte in Shelton. And I do agree with the yay and nay process of our voting rights. And I am in favor of both Proposition 1 and 2. However, I'm not here to debate this because that should be done after it has been put to the people. We have successfully completed the process needed to get these items on the ballot. Holding this off on the ballot concerns me greatly about the people's rights to petition their government. And I hope you consider that it is our right to petition our government and our right to vote on things. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's it on that list, but I
Okay.
think that she's got some more over there.
You have some more? We appreciate all of your patience getting through this process, and everybody that wants to speak should be able to speak tonight. So next it is Max Nelson, I believe.
Max Nelson, 2403 Pacific Avenue, Olympia. Mayor Krantz, members of the commission, I appreciate the chance to speak with you just briefly here tonight. I am the labor policy analyst for the much maligned this evening Freedom Foundation, but I would like to just share a few thoughts about the process and the substance that are at play here in these initiatives. And, there are policy debates that we can have about the merits of either proposition. There are good arguments to be made for increased transparency in the collective bargaining process. As one of the previous speakers already noted, there are multiple states that have successfully had open collective bargaining for many years. Reportedly, it smooths the negotiations out because both sides tend to behave a little bit more reasonably and start out closer to the middle. As far as the second proposition, it really does come down to an issue of employee freedom. And we've heard tonight that, it's employees' choice to take a unionized job. And at some point back in history, there was a vote, in many cases 30-plus years ago. I don't know the date for Shelton, but I can guarantee you there has not been a vote on union representation here in some time. It really does come down to the individual rights of the employees to choose whether or not to associate with a private organization that gets to take money from their paychecks as a condition of keeping their jobs. And I would argue very strongly that such requirements are an infringement upon the First Amendment rights of any employee that is subject to these conditions. And of course, there are also the legal arguments that have been frequently discussed so far this evening. And again, I would like to reiterate what some of the other speakers have already mentioned, that state law authorizes but does not require union security clauses, and does not, it basically doesn't apply existing Open Meeting Act requirements to collective bargaining. There are no prohibitions in state law against local jurisdictions enacting greater transparency or greater protection of their union employees' rights at the local level. But regardless, these arguments are not at issue here for us tonight. The Commission has really only two options. The City Attorney would have you believe that there is a third. But effectively, you know, the signatures have already been gathered and submitted and verified. And state law gives the Commission two options. It either goes to the people for a vote or it's enacted outright. And the Commission itself could, should it choose not to forward the propositions to a vote of the people, would be for certain in violation of state law. And so the legal questions about whether or not this is appropriate to go on the ballot are something that needs to be decided, if at all, by a judge and not by this Commission here tonight. So I would encourage you to keep that in mind as you make your deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have one other name on this list, and it's Todd Rhodes.
Todd Rhodes.
Excuse me a second, Todd. I will take three more people, and then we're going to cut the debate off. So if you have three more people, if you really want to speak to this issue, there's one, so I have two more, please. And come up and follow this gentleman here in your signatures. And state your name and address for the record, please.
Todd Rhodes, 521 West C Street, Shelton. I have lived in Shelton my whole life, and I've worked for the city of Shelton for 17 years. And back when the foundation was gathering signatures, two of their points were to make it optional to join the union or not. And as the attorney stated, that clause is kind of in there with religious beliefs. And the second one was make a no strike clause or work stoppage, which the attorney also addressed, which is also already on the books. So I would like to question the validity of how the signatures were obtained. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have room for one or two more other people there, and then I think we've been hearing a good cross-section of the arguments for and against. So, is this Travis? Come on up, Travis.
Hi, Travis Couture, 390 Northeast River Hill Drive, Belfair, Washington. I'm in favor of Proposition 1 and Proposition 2. I think that it's, we've gone a long time, and just hearing some of the testimony, you'd think that the sky has fallen and doomsday is upon us because we ask for our public officials to conduct an open meeting when dealing with public sector money. I think that's absolutely insane. And as a member of a union myself, I personally would like the right to work, especially when some of my union dues go to fund political candidates that I may not necessarily agree with. And I don't believe that government should be in the business of legislating or initiating force. So when if I'm forced to donate to a charity of my choice or to the union, I mean, this is kind of extortion if you think about it. All we're asking for in these two things is that we conduct an open meeting, one, and two, that we give people the right to freely associate with their employer without the strings attached to a third party. So to finish, I am in support of both Proposition 1 and Proposition 2. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, is that it? That seems like it. Okay, we greatly appreciate everybody's comments, and now we will talk to you a little bit about how we feel about this issue. And any comments from my commission?
Yes, I was just wondering, Kathleen, did you want to say anything else, or you? I wasn't sure if she was.
Did you want to recap on anything that was spoken?
Uh-oh. Never
That's not
mind.
the problem.
Sorry, I
It's
asked.
the little guy in the corner. That one
Okay.
doesn't do anything. So.
Just to clarify, Shelton.
Just sit back, Kathleen.
I tried my best to fix it.
Has a commission form of government, but a few decades ago adopted or elected to govern itself under the optional municipal code. So it's kind of a fancy way of saying you are both a code city and a commission city.
Okay.
Just one clarification.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I typically have trouble with the microphone, so I'm trying to make sure everyone can hear me here. First of all, I would like to say that over the years, I have signed a number of petitions when they have been presented to me at grocery stores or, out in public, and I have signed them without even questioning whether they were legally valid as far as what I was signing the petition for. So I can appreciate the fact that there are so many signatures on the petition, and I thank everyone for their interest and for wanting to be involved. And I have to say as well that if you throw out transparency in front of me, I'm typically going to sign that petition. So without going into my personal opinion on the bigger issues, which is the union, I would just like to say that it is extremely unfortunate in our world that Shelton was chosen as one of the 3 cities to receive these initiatives. And it's unfortunate for our city, it's unfortunate for our employees, for our larger community, for our citizens, and also for our commission because we are put in a no-win situation. I believe strongly that we need to take the legal advice that our attorney has given us and the opinion of our city manager and take no action other than to allow the courts to determine the validity of these initiatives. And if it comes down to being sued, I would prefer that we get sued for being right. It sounds like that may be inevitable, so I think by taking a stand on behalf of the state government and what we are required to do through them, that is the best decision for us.
All right.
I find it kind of interesting after listening to all this that of all the people who spoke in favor of it, one person lived in the city of Shelton city limits who actually has a stake in it. People in the county, it's not going to cost you guys nothing. It's going to cost the city residents money. The people who aren't from the city of Shelton, it's real easy to stand back and be for something when you don't have a stake in it. You got no horse in the game. When this thing came up, I'd already made up my decision how to look at this without even listening to the city attorney. And the first thing I did, as I do in most elections, is I like to know if I'm unsure of something, I research it. I want to find out where the money's coming from. So I got online and I looked up Freedom Foundation, and as I believe it was Luke Manning mentioned, these guys are fully funded by large corporations. To name a few of them, the Walton Corporation, which owns Walmart. It's a $2 billion corporation who is bent on not improving minimum wages and is union busting. Another one of their foundations are the Koch brothers. I believe they're worth $115 billion. They're notoriously a right-wing libertarian party who is bent on destroying the working class family. And when I see that it's coming from there, and coupled with nobody from the city really even came and spoke in favor of it, I know you got the signatures on the petitions, but where are these people who want to stand up in favor of it? We have a stake in the game. It's going to cost us police coverage. It's going to cost us public safety, all for an initiative that should be taken to the state level. This has no business being put on the burden of tax-paying working class people here at all. And I just feel real horrible that people are being represented by groups that aren't even living in Shelton. That I think if this does go to a ballot measure, I think you're going to find a lot more people against you. And I'm really, not looking forward to it, but in a way I think it will come to that. And I think that the true vote of people will come out on that, in that, this is not for Shelton. This is not for small towns to decide. It needs to be decided on a larger scale. If you have a legislative problem, you go to the legislature, not to the city commission. Our hands are tied. We also took oaths of office to uphold state laws. I'm not going to vote for something that's going to make me guilty of a misdemeanor, as is put in the initiative. I don't feel that the money that's pouring into this thing is not representative of the working class people. I didn't want to go there with this, but some of these groups are so, in my opinion, anti-American that you read what they stand for. Two of them, the Koch brothers and the Bradley Foundations, all inherited their money from parents. Both those parents were founding members of the John Birch Society that goes back to the 1960s, who opposed all civil rights and continue to do the same thing. I feel the big picture of this is an attack, like I said before, an attack on the working class people of America. And I don't want it in my community, and I'm going to vote against these petitions and find them invalid.
All right. I should have said that earlier. We don't clap for anything here, just because what happens is then we get into like celebrity games or whatever. So.
Well, I am a celebrity.
Yeah, I know. I just didn't want to kind of get into this. So if I say something you like, which I may or may not do, please do not clap for me, because I take this serious, okay? I take it as serious and as passionate as my friend Mike Olson does. I don't look at it as where money came from to get people to sign signatures. I don't look at that, okay? What I look at is we have two trains of thought in this room, and I don't look at either one as being bad or good. We got a lot of learning to do on how to be good, civil community members to come together and to build a community on principles that we can all agree upon. Okay? So I don't really want to get into the battle of this. I'm not going to speak anything about my personal. One time that we were in a meeting and a comment came about, this is a right-wing wacko organization. And I said, I don't care. I don't care if it was a wacko liberal organization. What I care about is that some people got together in this community. They went out and they got 600 signatures. If the unions had gotten this community and gotten 600 signatures, they'd have every right to come and do whatever they wanted to do here, and I would give them all the respect that I have, just like I'm giving the respect for the people that got the signatures, okay? They have an opinion, and their opinion has a right to be heard because, number one, they went through an initiative process, a legal process. They got 600 signatures. They got signatures that were okayed by the county. They came into this room and they were civil. And I'm not going to say they're bad people, or I'm not going to say that they're doing the wrong thing. They did the legal thing. Now, here's the deal, is we also have to look at the law. We have to take a look at what is our position here, and it's confusing, and it's hard, and it's not real easy. So I really don't care if it's whack-wing, how do you say it, whack-wing, liberal, or a whack-wing conservative. I really don't care. What I care about is that we have a group of people living in this community, and I know that for 3 years I have fought tooth and nail to try and bring money into this community to help pay for all of the stuff that we need, okay? That's my contribution. That's what I'm trying to do. And when I come to this decision, it's not an easy decision, because one group of people did the legal thing. They got the signatures. Whether we like it or not, they did their part, and they got something that they wanted to vote to the people. Okay? But, so I'm just saying, I'm friends with everybody. Don't be mad at me tomorrow. If you see me at the supermarket, smile and say, hi, Gary, how you doing? Because we are all here together. And guess what? We don't all agree. That's the big thing here, is we have a right not to agree. This is America. We have a right not to agree. But if somebody, and I don't care what they want, if they want to go through the effort of going through a process, then number one, they got to have the respect that they have a right for their opinion. They have to have respect that they have a right for the opinion. Now, whether we okay it, you okay it, or anybody else okays it, this will be a legal challenge, and this will be something that we will have to defend in court. Okay. Obviously, my fellow commissioners have spoken in agreement with the legal counsel and our administrator on that position. And I am going to also go in that direction because I've looked at it, and I look at it as right now it is the city of Shelton's position is we're a rock to a hard place, and we have a divided community, and that I actually believe that this process is a good process, but I actually believe that this language in here does conflict too much with state law. So I'm going to err on the side of agreeing with my fellow commissioners that we're going to go this route, which is basically deem that we do not feel that it is totally legal in the eyes of state WACs and the state constitution, whatever, okay? That's where I'm going to go with it. But I'm not going against being an enemy with anybody in this room or in this community because as a mayor of the city, I consider all of you my friends, okay? Whether I agree with you or not, it's nothing personal with me. They did their part, but I can't go forward and actually put this thing on the ballot because it has, in my opinion, we have a legal opinion, and it's our city attorney, and I see all of the stuff, and I would have to go in that way. So my whole deal is I just don't want to be enemies with people, but if people in this community get signatures, they got a right, if it's legal, they got a right to put it on the ballot, and I will support that because that's what we do. Okay, so that's my statement on that. So we've kind of already voted, but I think we will probably make a motion at this time, unless the city administrator has anything else to add to this. You don't want to jump in this conversation, I don't think. So, do we have a motion?
I move that we find the petitions are legally invalid and decline either to enact them as ordinances or submit them for a vote at a special election.
Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Okay. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This motion passes. Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming out. Like I popped a balloon or something, so okay, here we are, there we are, okay. Huh? Yeah, there's two more to the meeting. We got some follow-up stuff if you want to stick around, but next is the administration.
Shouldn't have paused.
Yeah.
Administration report, yeah, well,
Thank
what I
you
should-
all for
Thank you for coming out. Okay, and we'd be happy to hear that. We do have an administration report, and I kind of ended the meeting there, but we do have some follow-up things that we got to do. And so forgive me for probably not dragging the rest of them through the remainder of our meeting. You're welcome to stay. So, administration report, Mr. Dave O'Leary.
I just have a couple of things. I want to report on the Turner Street project. We should get started on that project this Wednesday, day after tomorrow. We're at least getting in and using the zipper to pull up asphalt. It's the top layer of asphalt. The idea within another week or two we'll get the second layer on top of it. So that's going to be a project a long time coming. The costs are a little higher on that project, and I think you heard about that a couple of weeks ago. And we're going to need to be coming back to you to kind of sort out how the finances go once we've got it done. I think we're moving monies off of one project, off a couple other projects into this one to make that happen. Anyway, I just wanted to, there's just more budget work to do in order to make sure that everything's done. We may be moving some one-time money and REAP money around, that sort of thing, in order to be able to make sure we can do all the projects that are now queuing up. The other piece is that I'll be at the Skookum Rotary on Wednesday morning to make a presentation, so if anybody would like to come, just let me know.
On Wednesday?
At 7?
Yeah, 7:30, I think, is at Skookum. So don't two of you come.
No.
Just
But we're writing it down,
so,
doing our due diligence.
anyway, just
It's too early for me anyway. I'm going to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to see you speak. So.
anyway, we don't want to tell the Skookum that they've got a public meeting to
Mike
do.
will already be up down there having coffee, so you can go over there.
Well, I'm sure they'd welcome everybody that wanted to come, but we don't need minutes and
That's
so
right.
on for that. So anyway, that's my administration report.
Okay, we did have another opportunity for general public comment. If anybody else would like to say any more, you're welcome to come forward. You can do that. And just sign your name right here. You can come right up here. Just your name and address for the record, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Bob Rogers, 229 Wyandotte, husband of the one person from Shelton that you referenced. And my comment is, when I come to a commissioner meeting, I haven't been to many, I'd like not to be insulted. Thank you.
Okay. If I'd done that, I'm sorry.
It was not you, Mayor.
Okay. What we're going to do is move on to administration final touches. All right, our next meeting will be September 15th at 6 p.m. in the evening, and that will be next week, next Monday. This meeting is adjourned.